I think I just witnessed the best blockbuster I've ever seen personally in a cinema.
Dune 2 is a phenomenal movie, and I highly recommend it.
This might be the greatest sequel I've ever seen.
I consider this to be a genuine sci-fi masterpiece.
I really like Dune Part 2.
Dune 2 was a good movie. Very good. Great, even. But... look, the last thing you want is to hear another film guy talking about how Denis Villeneuve is the next god king of directing and how Timothée Chalamet is the next poster child for the Sigma grind set. But, wait, is it Villeneuve? Or Villeneuve? Villeneuve? Villeneuve?
Because Denis Villeneuve...
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
Who cares about the director? Denis Villeneuve?
Hi, I'm Denis Villeneuve.
But let's be honest, while all those creators mentioned that the movie isn't perfect, I really didn't pick up on much real criticism. But I do know what verisimilitude means now.
Well, verisimilitude. Verisimilitude.
Now, I'm no film major or anything. Comedy writing and performance, actually. Okay. So if there's anything that I could critique, it would be the writing. And more specifically, the comedic writing. And you know what? It's kind of the worst part of Dune 2. Why is this movie trying to be funny? Dune 1 wasn't funny. I don't think there was a single bit or piece of humor in it, like, at all. And that was fine. I didn't even notice it. But Denis, Craig, and John really thought they could sneak a Type 5 into this 2.5-hour movie. And I'm not here for it. This is officially a Dune 2 critique. And spoilers for Dune and Dune 2. It's been like 3 months. I gotta start going to the theater more. Catch up on these movies.
Dune is a movie with giant sandworms, mysterious witches, and Timothée Chalamet tripping balls in the desert.
Having humor in Dune 2 isn't an inherent problem. As a matter of fact, the book is funny at points too. There's a particularly good dinner scene shortly after the Atreides family arrives on Arrakis, where Paul and Jessica entertain various socially important guests. With her Bene Gesserit training, Jessica makes a fool out of several bumbling traders and noblemen as she tries to ascertain the motives behind each of the guests. It's like reading a Jane Austen novel set in the future. The politics of power and game theory allow Jessica and Paul to set up their overconfident guests to fall into social blunders, contributing to Dr. Kynes' flip to support them. It's a masterclass in subtle, biting humor that, most importantly, doesn't feel out of place in this futuristic yet feudalist society. Is it laugh out loud hilarious? No, that's not really what the book is going for, though. It's a sci-fi epic tackling themes of colonialism, white savior narratives, and the role of religion in society. But it is funny. You get to see these dumb characters humiliated at underestimating Jessica, and it further emphasizes the real danger that the Bene Gesserit possess to their enemies. The humor in Dune, the novel, is much more sardonic and targeted at the victim's expense. Baron Harkonnen finds himself on both sides of the volley at times, insulting his incompetent nephew Raban while simultaneously being mocked by the Emperor. They cut these scenes for time reasons, and that's totally fine. You can't fit every bit of character development into 2 movies, but what they replaced it with is unforgivable in comparison. This isn't the first time that Dune has been adapted to film either. David Lynch's 1984 Dune movie is also hilarious at times, though I'm not sure how much of that was actually intentional. Raban in particular is a complete goofball throughout the movie, and you just can't take him seriously. He's so cheesy and over the top, I genuinely don't understand how you wouldn't want to laugh at him. We also get some absolutely wacky scenes with Thufir Hawat having to milk a cat to keep himself alive after being captured and poisoned by the Baron.
By milking this smooth little cat body, you receive your antidote. It must be done each day.
This scene is a wild interpretation of the source material that is hard to hold a straight face through. You know what this very serious movie about war and deception should have? A scene where they milk a cat. Yeah, that's going in. That's right. My name is David Lynch, and I know how to make people uncomfortable. He really did that. He really did. Okay, and we can't forget the absolute show stealer that was a 4-year-old Alia in the throne room. Look, I had very few expectations for this movie, but having a toddler slit the throat of her grandfather, run out onto the battlefield, and kill enemy soldiers as any good Fremen child would do was one of them. But alas, we'll have to deal with a 30-second flash forward to Anya Taylor-Joy on a beach. Alright. Okay. So Dune is capable of humor. Should it be as schlocky as the original movie? No. No. I'd much prefer the nuanced humor and sly mockery riddled throughout the book. Even the absence of humor would be a better choice than that. And that's precisely the route that Dune 1 takes. And I think it was a good call, personally. If you don't think you can pull it off, I think it's best to play it straight. I didn't leave the theater thinking, wow, that was a good movie. You know what would have made it better? If they had put in some space travel humor. The thing about space travel is... He's got like a microphone, doesn't he? He just like... You want to know the thing about space travel? I don't know anything about space travel. I was just in a movie about Pop-Tarts. I dated a high schooler. I don't even know if that's a good impression. But he did date a high schooler. And that's wrong. If you make a completely serious piece of media and happen to have a couple of unintentionally funny bits, that's great. Plenty of sci-fi and fantasy movies don't have any intentional humor in them. The Matrix has maybe one joke in the entire franchise, and yet people love making bits about the humor of the characters' genuine lines and reactions. I know Kung Fu. I can't do that one either. I don't do impressions. But I do mockery. And plenty of fantastical movies and shows have comedic writing that fits perfectly into the setting. Game of Thrones, for example, has lots of bits, jokes, and funny situation, but it's never at the expense of the source material. I'm never taken out of the world at the expense of a bit of humor. That's the cardinal sin of narrative-based comedy. If the joke takes you out of the scene, you're in Goofy Town. And that's not where we want to be in a space opera like Dune.
I'm not the Messiah! I say you are, Lord, and I should know I followed a few. Hail Messiah!
I don't know who in the writer's room decided that Stilgar was gonna be the funny guy, but I've got some words for you. Firstly, if you're gonna commit a character in a very serious war movie to being the comedic relief, while also making him the religious pillar of the community and a mentor, that's a choice. To be honest, I do think he's genuinely funny at times, and not in a bad way. That bit where Paul renounces the title of Lisan al-Gaib and Stilgar immediately is like, oh my god, he's so humble. God, he did it. He is so humble. He got us, dude. He knows. Great stuff. So good. But at the same time, it's exactly what I could see going on in a Marvel movie. Sure, the execution is better, and it helps that they're not putting a joke in literally every other line. But what happened to the stoic, wise Stilgar from Dune 1? Did he just put on a Sigma Grindset face for the first movie? He's actually just a cuddly little tiger once you get to know him. You're better than this, Denis. I know you are. It's not a performance issue either. Javier Bardem does an incredible job as Stilgar. It's so good, in fact, that sometimes I can't tell if he's kidding or not. Like when he's telling Jessica that she needs to put her life in danger to take the place of the dying Reverend Mother, and she's like, are you for real right now? Yeah, girl. I didn't believe him either. In Dune 1, it was clear that Stilgar's mannerisms differed from how civilized people would behave. For instance, the first time you met Paul and Duke Leto, he spits, he's curt and uninterested in hearing what Leto has to say. It's really easy to translate that difference in behavior into a comedic tone. I'll give credit where credit's due though. Denis could have easily gone overboard with the social faux pas and had some sort of Drax type character, but he does keep the outright bits to a minimum. It does feel grounded when Stilgar cracks a joke about the djinn that could possibly drive Paul to his death when he's making his first crossing as a Fremen. But you know what Stilgar really reminds me of though? You guys remember in Rise of Skywalker when C-3PO was like, too funny? Yeah, he had always had kind of comedic moments throughout the series, usually at the expense of his sensibilities as a proper translator droid. But it's like they knew Anthony Daniels wasn't going to be coming back for another movie, so they really punched up his lines so that he'd be extra memorable. Again, I'm not saying that Stilgar is that over the top with his bits, but after going from literally 0 jokes in the first movie, it's jarring to have him doing bits like he's on Netflix as a joke. But back to what I was saying about him being the religious pillar of the movie. He is the unmistakable voice of religious belief that eventually overpowers the more secular Fremen. And something interesting happens when you make the funny, charming, affable character one of the driving forces behind Paul's fall from grace. And that's that people will begin to align their views with the likable person, even if that person is wrong. Stilgar is one of the main reasons that Paul ascends to lead the Fremen, his #1 supporter in overthrowing the Emperor, and at the end of the movie, he's leading the assault on the galaxy, causing billions of deaths in the wake of Paul's mission of liberation. And not only that, who's the one character who tries to stop Paul from going down this path of death and destruction? Chani is the only voice of reason in this entire movie. She rightfully demands that Paul not lead the Fremen into battle for Arrakis. She alone fears for his safety when his mother basically poisons him so she can get her genocide on. And she eventually leaves after being cast to the side for a political marriage. And also so she doesn't literally contribute to a genocide that her boyfriend and his mommy really wanted to start. When you make your voice of reason the buzzkill to the jovial religious fanatic, you really start to muddy the message of your movie, especially when you relegate the voice of reason to a woman of color in a movie that's dripping with patriarchal social standards. I'm not saying that Villeneuve did a bad job making sure that Paul looked like the bad guy by the end of the movie. He actually did a way better job than Frank Herbert did, and props to him for making the movie more inclusive. But I was left feeling a bit conflicted at the end of the movie, partially because that's not how Chani's story ends in the book, but also because it felt like the movie wanted me to feel conflicted about Chani leaving her abusive ex. Like, good for you, girl. He lied to you. He's gonna cheat on you. He dropped you like yesterday's lunch. So let him go. Let him commit that little war campaign for funsies. I've seen people compare Paul to Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith, and you know what? I think in some ways Anakin's story is a little more tragic, more impactful, and even more clearly illustrates that he's the bad guy at the end of the story. Sure, it's cheesy and the dialogue is horrific, but at the very least, the final scene between him and Obi-Wan made sure you knew which side he was on. Anakin was the victim of his own prophecy, convinced of his power by his surrogate father and mentor, Chancellor Palpatine. You know, it's all, like, you see where I'm going here? You see the plots, you see the threads they're going, you know? I mean, yeah, obviously Star Wars stole from Dune, and now we're getting to see Dune now, and it looks like it's stealing from Star Wars, but it's really not. But as far as this interpretation goes, you know what I'm saying, right? And though his friends and loved ones try to stop him and nearly do succeed in killing him, it's the poetic irony that he causes his own downfall to the dark side. Paul finishes the movie with a couple good gashes on him, but he still claims the throne. We don't even get to see his reaction to Chani leaving. His realization that he doesn't even have what he was fighting for anymore. How would that have looked? Another good example of this would be in Tiger King. Everybody across the internet slandered Carol Baskins, making remix songs of her, sending death threats to her, and if we're being honest, looking back on it several years later, she was the victim in that story. Yes, she came off a little off-puttish, but she was genuinely doing the most good in that narrative, and it was the way that people were able to manipulate that narrative to serve their own needs that ended up putting this flawed and out-of-touch hero as a bad guy.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's Carol at Big Cat Rescue.
And at the same time, you have people rallying around Joe as this mythological, larger-than-life figure, even though he's literally creating this horrific environment for these tigers, feeding them scraps from Walmart, killing them when they get too old to be of use to him. He was a terrible, evil person. Not to mention the grooming that happened with a lot of his partners. By every metric, he is a bad person. But somehow we created this folk hero out of him. And it's kind of disgusting how everybody was able to just agree that that was the direction we were going to take. I don't think that Dune 2 leans that hard into this style of narrative. But that's the exact same type of thinking that happens when you create a character who's funny and is wrong, and you create a character who is very serious and right. And especially the case when it's a woman, and even more so when it's a woman of color. That's just what happens. But we're getting way too far away from the jokes. Let's get back to the real criticism.
There's your power.
This is only the beginning.
Chani isn't off the hook just yet though. Her relationship with Paul is fine and all, but good gravy, there is just one scene that bugs the shit out of me. During the beginning of the movie, it's clear that Chani and Paul have a playful, chiding friendship. She's constantly ragging on him for his social blunders, and he's quick to reassure her he knows how foolish he looks. It's cute. It's super believable too. But then we get hit with what has to be the worst line in the movie.
Like this.
Now that's interesting because in the film books I've studied, the anthropologists say in order to properly sound like you actually have to.
Now you may be wondering, what the hell are you on about, Andrew? But let me ask you, what year is it? Does the dialogue feel like it's from the year 10,191? Because it's feeling a lot more like a liberal PSA from 2018 to me. What are we doing here, Denis? What happened? You must have put that line in as a placeholder and then couldn't think of a better one, right? Maybe you forgot to go and change it? This feels like a rough draft line to me. I want you to think back to Lord of the Rings. Can you imagine if Gandalf had asked Frodo to take the ring to Mordor and he had said, that's busting on God for real. For real, that's busting on God, no cap. Denis, are you really trying to tell me that not only are we in a futuristic society that has literally reverted into a neo-feudalist monarchy after an AI robot uprising, one with warring houses a la Game of Thrones, with dukes refusing to marry their purchased concubines because it places them in a better political position within the Landsraad, one that mirrors our own incredibly sexist medieval times, and we're picking a fight with mansplaining right now? For real? I'm not saying that mansplaining can't be a problem in the world of Dune, or that it's not a problem right now either. I mean, hell, I've been mansplaining for the past 10 minutes. But that's the point though, isn't it? A movie as spectacular as Dune 2 is supposed to transport me into another galaxy at another time and keep me enthralled with the characters from that place. I mean, come on. You went so far as to predict the end of the final fight scene by having it mirror the first practice fight between Paul and Gurney Halleck. Yeah. Didn't think I'd catch that one, did you, Denis? I was paying attention. You're going to go through all of that trouble and ruin it by making a cheap mansplaining joke. Are you kidding me? I'm genuinely frustrated by this. I need to get on my chair. I'm so angry. I'm at the edge of my seat. How could you go for such an easy and overdone bit like that? It wasn't even funny. And now I'm sitting here through the rest of the movie thinking, did they really make that joke? Watching the most visceral sandworm riding scene I've ever witnessed in my life. I can't believe they made that joke. Witnessing atomics going off at the beginning of the final fight scene that would rival Oppenheimer. Did that mansplaining line really happen? This whole movie was so close to being the perfect sci-fi experience. And that one line ruins it. If you think I'm overreacting, just think about it for a second. Would you have let that slide in Game of Thrones? Or in any other fantasy story? Surely not for anything worth its salt. People are going to come back to this movie in 10, 20, 30 years, since, you know, it's a modern classic now, and guess how well that line will have aged by then? Will people even remember what mansplaining is? Will it matter at all by then? This one line stains the movie with a coat of 2010s virtue signaling that I am astounded by. Am I crazy? You're gonna look at me and you're gonna tell me that I'm wrong? Her sister was a witch! Who knows? Maybe it's just me. To everybody else, it's just a cute little line that shows how naive Paul is and brings him closer to Chani. But there has to have been a better way to get that point across, right? Instead of the obvious, well, actually, Paul could have tried explaining his point of view first, giving Chani a chance to respond verbally, telling him that he needs to embrace her ways of learning. Just have him struggle to get the concept and have her throw in a couple of goading remarks to incite the chemistry. Or maybe let her make some jokes, you know. Give her a personality outside of being right all the time so that people can relate to her and maybe walk away from the movie thinking that she was actually the cool and fun and interesting person and people should be on board with her instead of Sigma Grindset boy and jokes a lot. I don't know. And I can't be clear enough. Mansplaining is bad, and we should make media that represents that. And covert sexism is just as serious a problem as real, visible sexism. But if you're going to do it, just pick a more relevant thing to talk about for the setting. Have a more powerful moment when Paul asks for Irulan's hand in marriage. That one's a pretty big blow for feminism. Show more of the Bene Gesserit's girl bossing. Bring back the conversation Chani and Jessica have about being the real wives of the story. I don't know, just anything but what you did.
Yes, obviously, he's depicted as a messianic figure. He's the Messiah, and he just happens to be, even though, isn't he Jewish? But whatever.
Dune 2 is good. It's great even. Better than Dune 1, that's for certain. But it's not perfect. And I don't think people are talking about the consequences of changing the tone of your characters and dialogue has on the quality of the movie. You could have the most beautiful sets, the best cinematography, the best actors, but it can all be overshadowed by bad writing. It would be nice if there were more people actually putting forth good criticism to this movie instead of glazing it like the next Godfather. Maybe as time goes on, we'll start to see people mellow out on the praise and start looking at it as a flawed but monumental achievement. It's leagues better than anything Marvel's ever done, and I do hope that it leads to a renaissance in blockbuster movies. Thank you for watching. I know I'm very late to the party on this one, but I felt like I needed to talk about this movie specifically. I watched probably 24 video essays on this, and it really didn't feel like people were digging in as much as I had hoped. Most of them were written by cis men, so I kinda get it. You know. But I hope throwing a more negative and critical analysis out there will help generate a little bit more nuance around this movie. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and I would love to know what you thought about Dune 2. Did you love it? Did the humor work for you? Was it the funniest thing you've ever heard? I know the memes were going crazy for this one. So if you loved it and you did not mind the jokes at all, that's so cool. I'm glad it worked for you. If you're okay with me coming out with these later ones, I kind of want to do one on poor things because I have some words for poor things. Here's another video of mine that I picked out just for you, and here's the link to subscribe because I'm going to be doing more of this. Whether you like it or not. See ya. Goodbye. Bye now. Like this is the... Get the fuck out of here. I think I spit on that. Okay.